Hello and welcome to the ZPro Tri Invitational Season 2. Get ready because we've really mixed things up this time around. One thing we didn't change was bringing you the best triathletes from all around the globe. We've just gone with a very different and unique format this time. Each week we'll bring you 3 different races for men and 3 different races for the women. That's right, we're up in the ante on our athletes and presenting them with 3 short, sharp races, 3 different challenges, and 3 opportunities to play to their strengths and maybe even protect their weaknesses. Alongside me for the ride this time is someone who has recently joined the team on the Triathlon Podcast, a world-class triathlete herself, and a good friend of mine. It's Sarah True. What's going on, Sarah?
Hey, thanks for having me on. Pretty excited to be doing some commentary with you and to be watching the racing. I love racing. I also love watching it. Big fan.
So, yeah, what does it feel like to be on the other side of the tape?
Well, let's see. My heart rate's already elevated. I'm sweating a little bit. So it's kind of like being at the start of a race, just going to say. It's not that different.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I've got the similar vibes here. I know we're all excited. This whole series is a lot different than races we've had in the past for these triathletes. And I mean, it's hard. I'm nervous because there's all these different race formats, but also some of the best, like literally the best triathletes on the planet, right?
Yeah, what's so exciting about this sort of format is you get long course athletes, short course athletes, all mixing it up together. And we have no idea how people are going to handle these 3 races all in a couple of hours. So it's going to keep it interesting. It's a lot of excitement ahead of us.
No, certainly. It's going to be very good. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the races that we have on tap here for today. We've got, as I said, 3 different races, but we're going to start out at Crit City, the downtown Dolphin course. We're going to have sprints every time up the KOM underneath the KOM banner. So points are up for grabs, 3, 2, 1 each lap as they go under the KOM banner, but then also 20 points for the first athlete across the finish line, going down to 1 point for the last athlete that crosses that finish line. So exciting racing there. The crit's always hard, but you add points every lap, it gets pretty difficult. And then for the second race of the day, we're doing a traditional scratch series type of race that's going to be on the London Classic course. That one, it's a little bit easier to get our head around. It's just going to be all the athletes doing kind of a standard Zwift bike race, 11 kilometers. So still, all these races very, very short, a lot shorter than most of these triathletes are used to, certainly the long distance athletes. So it's going to take a little bit different skill than they're used to showing us out on triathlon courses. And 20 points up for grabs again on that one. And then the last course is the one I'm most excited about. It is a non-drafting mass start time trial. So it's going to look like everybody's out there racing each other, but there's no drafting in effect. So it's going to end up being the strongest man or women from the start to the finish gets the points. And again, it's 20 points for first person across the line, 1 point for the last, 15.6 kilometers this total race with 600 feet or 623 feet or 200-ish meters of climbing. It's going to be tough, and it's certainly going to be very, very difficult after these other 2 races where, there's really not much time in between these events for these athletes to recover. Does it sound hard, Sarah? It sounds difficult.
It sounds absolutely thrilling. So you're going to have the cumulative load of 3 different stages, but then very specific demands for each one. The first one, you have sprints, so that's really tapping into that high-end anaerobic. There's going to be some VO2 max. There's going to be your ability to sustain long threshold, but then you get the tactics of Zwift and throw it in there and people trying to key off each other. And I think we have some good racing ahead. They're going to be tired.
Do.
We know that much.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be tired. It's going to be great racing, and it's the athletes that are going to make it so exciting. So let's take a look at the athletes that we have coming in. From the last time around, Anthony Costas was one that surprised a lot of folks. He's not a name everybody recognizes. I recognize him from some great performances, but he surprised some other athletes out there. He knows Zwift racing very well, so watch out for him as well as those other athletes up on screen. And
yeah,
then
definitely
we've got yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
having some experience in Zwift racing is going to come into play here, and these are all experienced Zwifters.
Yeah, for sure. And another experienced Zwifter right in the middle of the screen is Alistair Brownlee. Obviously, he's got a gold medal to his name as well as a lot of other accolades, but very experienced Zwift racer, and he certainly is looking forward to showing that here today. We're looking forward to watching him. Also, we've got someone you know pretty well, Tim Don, Sarah.
Tim Don, fellow Zwift Tri Academy mentor. You know, I'm pulling for him, but he's got some stiff competition out there.
No, he certainly does. And should be noted, Johnny Broughtley was a late. He can't do the race, and last minute, Lionel Sanders is taking his spot. So I just want to point that out. Just happened in the last 20 minutes. Other athletes here, Sebastian Kienle. That's probably who I'm most excited about watching in this series. He's going to be new to the ZPro Tri Invitational, but he is someone that races triathlon like he's a cyclist. So I imagine he's going to be pretty aggressive in this racing here as well. But yeah, let's get out to the race course, and we've got our athletes out on course, ready to go already. And we already have, Sarah, somebody off the front. It looks like that athlete I was just telling you about, Sebastian Kienle, has a little bit of a gap already. Pretty aggressive. 0.1K in.
Aggressive, but he's done some Zwift racing before, I think. He's pretty familiar. Also, definitely a strong athlete. Very smart, very tactical. It's going to be exciting to watch him race today.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And he's, you know, as you know, anybody that's done any Zwift racing knows that you have to start out fast. And Sebastian hasn't raced a series with us before, so he got out a little aggressively, and you definitely want to err on the side of being a little too aggressive that first half a K rather than reacting and being off the back. So good work from him. Right now we got Matt Hansen at the front of the race, Tim Don moving through as well. Now, Sarah, so we're looking at all these great athletes, and it's going to be hard for us to necessarily talk about all of them. We're going to, but these are all world-class athletes. But we got a first climb coming up, so we're already in the action, Sarah. We're going to see who can get the first points. Again, there's a lot of points that we're adding up for this series. So especially in this points race, there's going to be each lap on this KOM arch. We see Lionel Sanders being aggressive already. There's going to be 3 points for first, 2 for second, and 1 for third. And went through, and it looks like Lionel Sanders got our first points across, so we'll see if we go there. Yeah, it looks like Sanders, Kunema, and Skoman are first, second, and third. So those athletes are racking up points already. Pretty impressive to see Lionel literally 20 minutes ago decided he was able to join us, and he's got the first points of the day.
Well, Lionel Sanders, you know, he probably knows this Zwift platform better than any of the other racers. He is known for being an aggressive racer from the gun, just loves to put himself into the hurt locker. So definitely an exciting addition to the race. I'm sure some of these competitors would have preferred if he didn't show up today, but it definitely makes us as fans pretty excited to have him here.
Yeah, for sure. I think the other athletes were probably stoked to see the defending champion from the last series not be on the start list. But Lionel's always full of surprises, coming off of a really impressive hour record attempt where he did get the hour record for Canada. And I don't know if you watched that at all, Sarah, but that was very, very impressive to see.
One thing you have to say, this man, he knows how to ride a bike, but he's really dialed in the more the aerodynamics, all the other sides of being a fast cyclist in the past few years, and it's really been very exciting to see the evolution of him as an athlete.
Yeah, absolutely, and he likes to be the best at anything he puts his his mind to, right? So when it came to riding on the track, that's all he focused on. And I think maybe that was maybe the reason he wasn't originally gonna race with us. He put all that effort in, but man, FOMO. Lionel had FOMO, so he's in with us. But let's talk a little bit about some of the other athletes that are out there that could easily take this series. One of those athletes was second in that first sprint, as we're coming up again on another sprint, was James Kunema. He showed us that he is a great cyclist at any level, but certainly a great Zwift racer as well. So we see him open up the sprint. Looks like Kunema's in front of Sanders. Costas is up there as well. So we'll see who got those points, but it looks like Costas might have gotten across the finish line, or sorry, the KOM arch first. So let's see. No, it was Kunema, then it was Costas, and then it was Ben Canute. So James Kunema is racking up those points. And Sarah, how the points are going to work on this first one, I know it's difficult. I can see, my brain is kind of already kind of twisting all over the place, but 3, 2, 1 each lap, and then including the last lap. And then the last lap is going to be 20 down to 1. We can see our standings there. Kunema has 5 points already. Now those points will roll over into the round totals for this first round that we're doing today. So the other races are 20 points max each, but this one, let's say James Kunema wins a couple more, he could have 10 points going into the final sprint and then win another 20. So then he has 30 points starting into race number 2. So there's these intermediate sprint points are very, very important, but also I imagine pretty taxing.
Yeah, when you start talking about the high-end sprints, really tapping into that very high power output efforts, does come at a pretty big physiological cost. So these athletes, it's going to be really interesting to see how their strengths and weaknesses play out. If you aren't an athlete who has a high-end sprint, you might be better off just saving yourself for the next couple of stages, because you're not going to be asked to really produce that kind of power. You have to understand your strengths. Some of these athletes might know that they have good sprints, might as well. I know somebody like Ben Canute, he's a strong cyclist. He really likes putting out those aggressive efforts. So this might be the kind of stage where he says, I'm going to try to rack up as many points as I can. Maybe I'm going to potentially cost myself down the road, but it's worth it. It's worth it to try to get the points where I can. I like being aggressive. I'm going to take this opportunity to really just give myself an advantage going into the next 2 rounds.
Yeah, great call. As we see Ben Canute really putting that effort in, going through underneath the banner. Let's see who came across. Costas was in there as well. So we'll get up the upper left-hand side of your screen. We'll see those points totals here in just a second. So yeah, it looks like it was Costas and Sanders in there as well, and Aaron Royal was in second place. So what we did see on the screen there for a minute, it does look like we have Joe Skipper and Peter Hemmerich, I believe, already kind of off the back of the group chasing. And as you know, it's pretty hard to catch up when you get out of the group on Zwift racing. So 2 athletes that are probably some of the stronger cyclists kind of in this field already kind of on the back foot.
Yeah, this may have been an instance where they weren't quite prepared for that sprint. Once a gap opens up, you're not getting the benefit of the draft, and it's pretty easy to get shot out the back. I don't see it. Well, they might be letting up a little bit, letting their legs recover in between efforts. They have an opportunity to bridge back up, but really half the name of the game today for this stage is going to be staying in the group, trying to contend for whatever points you can. And if you get dropped, it's going to be a long stage. Doesn't mean you can't come back.
No, certainly not. And we need to remember that there's 3 races a day, right? So if you get to that point where you're Joe Skipper or Peter Hemmerich that are off the back, you kind of just should probably mail it off pedals, damage your legs, so maybe you can try to get that win in the next 2 races. But now on screen, Sebastian Kienle pushing that effort. You can see him in the yellow jersey in the front, pushing that pace. Sebastian, he's definitely, him and Lionel are going to be 2 that are definitely playing those tactics, right? So I think they know how hard these sprints are. So you might see them let some of the other athletes be a little bit more aggressive and maybe play some of their cards early while you are while they are trying to put that effort in and wait till the end of the race to really put in the strong effort.
Yeah, I think you have to consider the fact that we really are playing with different factors coming into this race. You have some athletes who are a bit more tired from training. They may have raced recently. They have to race a bit more conservatively. You have some athletes who are pretty fresh. People are at different points in the season. I know I saw Dave McNamee said on social media that he's just coming off break. He wishes his avatar had a few kilos less. So you're seeing people at different points of the season, and the smart racers are definitely they're going to understand the areas where they can really maximize and be conservative. But honestly, so much of this day is going to be about efficiency, whether or not you are an aggressive racer or you're a bit more conservative.
Yeah. I'm seeing nothing.
Me neither.
We didn't distract you too much. We had, it's 2020. Stuff happens. We're back. Racing is back on. Athletes are still out there getting after it. Mike Phillips at the front of the race. Mike Phillips is an athlete that kind of surprised some at just how good he was at Zwift racing last time around, Sarah. He was able to do well on the sprints. He was great in the time trial, even had technical difficulties. I'll call it a time trial, but it was the last stage, the last go around, but he made it a time trial. I think he started 2 minutes after everybody and still ended up finishing pretty high up in the standings. So he is one of the athletes that I expect to show something here today. But athletes are 10K in right now, 1.8 kilometers to go. We're going to have another sprint, KOM sprint, and then we will have our finish line sprint as well. So a lot of action happening, and Tim Don right now at the front of the race. There we go. So Jackson Laundry takes his pole, another athlete that had a great performance that last time we had this series, as well as Anthony Casas. So right now we're seeing kind of those athletes that were very dynamic in the first ZPro Tri Invitational Series, really trying to set up, I think, for this last lap, as they know kind of a lot is going to happen. So 1.2K to go. and we see the athletes are heading up to the KOM banner. So we might have missed, but we got Costas had 9 points, Sanders now at 8 points, Kunama was 7. Sanders goes off the front. Royal is on the board there as well, and it looks like Lionel Sanders is going to get another 3 points unless he's pipped at the line, but it seems like he got another 3 points. But we're going to go right in to the lead in to this final sprint where 20 points are up for grabs. So that was Sanders, Costas, and Ben Canute in 3, 2, and 1, finishing that 6th time underneath the KOM banner. So right now they are lining up. We have 600 meters left to go. We have Jackson Landry at the front of the group, Lionel Sanders in 2nd place, Mike Phillips there. Jackson Landry really putting a lot of effort in. He's using that power up to try to get a little bit of drafting advantage, but he gets passed through. Lionel Sanders is in 3rd place, just 300 meters to go. We have Mike Phillips right up front. Tim Don really showing himself today a little bit more than he did last time we had the series, but into that last right-hand bend is Jackson Landry at the front. Anthony Costas, Mike Phillips. Looks like Anthony Costas might have come around right at the end. No, that was Mike Phillips, I believe, with Jackson Landry and Anthony Costas in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Sarah, that was pretty hectic there at the end. That was good, yeah?
Wow, that was quite an ending. Yeah, I did not expect that it would be, it ended up being a line of athletes coming through the finish there. Some athletes probably, they burn a match a little soon. They tried to get to the front, and it may have cost them a little bit, but there we have our top 10 from round 1.
Yeah, there you go. So Mike Phillips gets his 20 points at the end. Landry at 19, Costas with 17 or 18. James Kunama up there as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how these tactics played out. As you know, Lionel Sanders was 5th across the line, but doesn't really matter because he had 3 points from getting that first or that last sprint going in too. So we're going to have our points totals here coming up, so we can kind of see where standings are as we finish up the men's first race in round 1 and heading into watch the women's field tackle the same course. So finish line points, as we said, Mike Phillips 20, Jackson Landry 19, Anthony Costas with 18, all the way down. Tim Don finishing in 10th place with 11 points. On their second screen, we'll have some of those other athletes a little bit kind of lower points as well. But if you add up their points from the finish line and from all those intermediary points along the way, we've got Anthony Costas with a pretty good lead, a 2-point lead over Lionel Sanders, but it opens up a little bit more after that with James Kunama being in 3rd place, Mike Phillips in 4th with 20, and Jackson Landry with 19. And one thing that kind of pops out to me, Sarah, is that all those athletes raced in our previous series, so a lot of experience and kind of knowing how to move around the group.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if there's going to be a steep learning curve over the next few weeks for athletes who are strong cyclists but don't have quite as much experience. Somebody like Martin Van Riel, who's a great cyclist but maybe has to learn a bit the ways of the Lionels and the Mike Phillips of the world.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I think the ways of the Lionel Sanders could be challenging to learn. It's going to take more than one race for sure. But Martin Van Riel will expect him to have some good performances moving forward. But what's going to be interesting to see is the tactics of these athletes on. I mean, they do not have much time to recover. Like you saw how quick that men's race was. That's how much time they have to recover before they go again as the women race. So we might see these people that are really aggressive, like Anthony Costas going for every sprint, and Lionel Sanders going for every sprint, being totally burnt at the 2nd or 3rd race, right?
So it's really going to come down to what they do in between, but also their baseline level of fitness. So the fitter athletes, you can do those hard, repetitive efforts and be able to get your heart rate back down, be able to clear lactate. If you're a well-rounded athlete who's trained some of these systems, you should be able to do pretty well over the 3 stages. But there is something to be said about really turning yourself inside out for the sprints. It does come at a big physiological load, so we'll see. Only time's going to tell whether or not they have the fitness and they have the ability to back it up? I think they do, but we're going to find out.
We'll see. We'll see. Definitely risky. So now let's get on to the women's race. We're going to go through, look at the athletes that we have here on screen. Ruth Assel right in the middle of the screen. She had great performance last time, just coming off of Ironman Florida, so might have a little bit sore legs. Jackie Herring was an athlete that showed us that she was pretty competitive in the last series as well. And Kelsey Withrow also coming off of racing Ironman Florida, as well as Laura Phillip and Sarah Crowley in that group. We're going to have, I mean, this is a talented field. And kind of our last screen, Imogen Simmons, Lisa Norden. That's an athlete that knows how to ride a bike. I mean, we know her as a podium in the Olympics, but also I believe, was she a Swedish time trial champion?
Well,
she's been doing some.
Both Melanie Moore and Lisa did the UCI World Championships this year. I believe Melanie's going to be racing professionally in 2021 cycling. These are all professional triathletes. Some of them also have the ability to do a single discipline at a world-class level. So we should be watching athletes like that. I also have my eye on Laura Phillip. This is not somebody, she did not do the last round of Zwift tri-racing, but she is an extremely strong, well-rounded athlete. I think we're going to have some great racing on our hands today.
Yeah, and she knows her Zwift. She rides on Zwift a fair bit, and she's another one of those athletes. And I would say most of these athletes are not going to sign up for a competitive event when they're racing against their peers and not do their due diligence to make sure they're putting their best foot forward. So definitely Laura Phillip is one that we're watching out for. Right now at the front of the race is Amelia Rose Watkinson, pushing almost 6 watts per kilogram at the front of the race. No big deal. It looks like they're really settling in to that pace. 6 watts per kilo. That is actually kind of a big deal. That's a lot of watts. But definitely a lot of action going on already.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to have some good action. Nobody's settling and waiting for the sprint. We'll put it that way. They're pushing hard all throughout this stage.
Yeah, there you go. So it looks like Laura Sedal got the 3 points on that one. Emma Pallant with 2 points, and Lisa Norden with 1 point that first time underneath the KOM banner. So if there was one, I'm putting you on the spot here, but if there was one athlete that you saw their name on this list, you said, oh man, this series is made for them as far as they know how to recover, they're really good at top end, who would your pick be? And again, totally on the spot.
So the challenge is you have people with the short course pedigree who really have, in their racing, they get to demonstrate that they have the ability to cruise high in power, that they have, good thresholds. Then you have the long course athletes who you don't see it in an Ironman, that they can produce high VO2 max, that they have a sprint. So I think that's what's so exciting about a platform like this is, when does an athlete like Meredith Kessler get to show that she has a sprint? Not doing it in an Ironman. So I honestly don't know. It's just, I think that's what is so cool about doing something like this, is having people with different strengths getting to show them when normally they don't get to in triathlon racing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great point. And it's not, if you look at these short races, you think, yeah, maybe the Ironman people don't have, the upper hand. But what Ironman people have is Ruth Assel is on the screen. Again, she just did an Ironman just a few days ago in Florida, riding a 4:32, which is crazy. But what Ironman athletes are used to is beating the crap out of their legs constantly and then going and doing it again, right? So I think it's possible they might have a little bit more, I don't know if endurance is the right word, but they might be able to handle these efforts on these short rests, maybe and tire out less than the shorter course athletes. Big maybe, but maybe.
Well, I think there is also this common misconception that the long course athletes are only out there grinding for hours on end. No, any of these athletes who are world-class triathletes, they are doing VO2 max efforts. They are doing really sharp efforts to make themselves into stronger, more robust athletes. I don't think anybody's just going out there every day and doing easy rides or kind of in that Ironman pace riding. If they are, I would be absolutely shocked at this level. So even though they do it's true. I do think there is this misconception that that's the training that professional Ironman athletes do, and absolutely not. We spend a lot of time working on high-end power.
Absolutely. If you train to go slow all the time, you're going to go slow all the time. So Ironman athletes have to put the effort in there. Looks like another sprint. And, again, you spoke to the amount of cycling specific experience that Lisa Norden has. And she is, I think, showing that right now. She is being very, very aggressive. Every one of these KOM banners, she is the one pushing the pace. I believe she got first across the finish line on that one as well. And it is a good tactic, because let's say she gets on the podium for each of those 6 laps and then has a top 5 finish in that sprint. Those kind of points are going to carry over to those second and third races. And, it's a great tactic. Maybe try to, put all your energy into all these sprint points. If you can handle it, then you have a little less pressure going into the second and third races. But right now, we've got Melanie Moore, another one of those athletes that you said is very, very good on the bike and has some cycling-specific racing experience at the front of the group. Holly Lawrence, we're super stoked to have her involved in the race series this time around. She's pushing the pace at the front, but look at that. We got a little view of Lisa Norden and the effort that she's putting in to be at the front of this race.
Yeah, we do have to note that everybody is still together. We're 4 laps in. Some athletes may be just saving their legs a little bit for the second two races, knowing that if I burn a match in this one, I'm just not going to be able to have it for the next 2 rounds. So just because somebody's not going for the sprints doesn't mean they can't be in contention today.
No, definitely not. And, one thing I'm surprised by in the men's race, and we haven't seen it yet in the women's race, is, you think the athletes are being aggressive going after all these sprint points. But for me, the aggressive move would be to counter off the back of that sprint point and try to get away maybe in solo for the next sprint and see if you could maybe get a couple laps or get a small group together. And we're not really seeing anybody attack off of the back of this sprint point. And I think that just shows how fast and how hard the group in general is all kind of pushing together. I mean, right now I'm looking at the info I have on the screen, and there's nobody under 4.5 watts per kilo and a bunch of athletes over 5 watts per kilo, and we're not really coming into the sprint yet. So pretty impressive.
I do have to say, this is where it's different than sometimes pure criterium in real life style racing. You can have people just self-pedaling outside of sprints. But these women are working hard. They're working hard all the way around the course. And part of that is, honestly, triathletes, we're used to working hard. What is it? Just another day's work if you're just going to be out there pushing the entire one. That's the way we roll.
Sure is. That's awesome. And so, yeah, that lap, we saw Amelia Rose Watkinson get the high points there. Lisa Norden there as well, with Laura Siddall getting 1 point. So there's our standings right now. Through a few laps, we've got Lisa Norden with 8 points, Emma Blunt with 7, Laura Siddall with 5, Amelia Watkinson with 3, and Jackie Herring has 1 point on the board. It's 4.3 kilometers to go with 3 laps remaining. So 3 more chances at a KOM banner and 1 chance at a finish line. You see anybody going for a solo breakaway now that maybe they heard me and they're like, oh, that's a good idea. I should do that. No?
No offense, I don't think so, Matt. I think they understand what this stage is, and this stage is not going for the heroic efforts. It's getting points if you feel like you can do it without too much cost. It's a good thing you're not in their ear. We'll put it that way.
It is a good thing, because I'd be way off the back. That is why that's a good thing. Yeah, for sure. My seat is way more comfortable than those bike seats. But anyways, yeah, so it's really impressive racing going on right now. I will say, still hanging in there, but looks like Holly Lawrence and Ruth Assel kind of got popped off the back there on that last one. So they're 8 seconds back riding together, and Lauren Brandon and Imogen Simmons are 38 seconds back chasing on. Laura Siddall really putting in great effort today. She's one that definitely had a good go the last time, in our series, but you can tell she really appreciates this crit setup and this points series setup. And she's being a lot more aggressive than I remember her being in the last series. So really cool to see Laura Siddall put that effort.
I'm going to call Laura Siddall for playing possum a bit. You know, on social media, she was downplaying her fitness. Oh, I'm not race ready. Oh, we see through you, Laura. I say that with love.
I've heard that before. Yeah, of course. Another Laura Phillip, putting in that effort as well. She's over just about 6 watts per kilogram as they go through under that banner one more time, and it looks like might have been Amelia Rose Watkinson again at the front, but we'll get official results here again. Emma Plant sitting there comfortably in the middle of the group. Yeah, Watkinson again, and Annabelle Luxford getting those 2 points as well. And you might have called her a sandbagger just then, Laura Siddall, with 1 point. It's possibly it's similar, but Lisa Norton still with 8 points. Plant with 7, Laura Siddall with 6, Watkinson also 6, and Annabelle Luxford on the board with 2 points. 2.4 kilometers to go, not much time, and we can see these athletes are already getting ready and excited for their rest, but they've got a couple more sprints to deal with. First, as we have Paula Finley rolling through the front of the group, doing her turn at the front, keeping the pace high and keeping those athletes that were off the back, they're off the back. Those athletes aren't coming back, and knowing the Zwift experience of those athletes that are off the back, they're probably going to soft pedal and maybe have some sprint for the minor placing, but save it for the next 2 races.
Yeah, I think we have to give credit to our athletes who are in, just Australia in this race, right? But they had to wake up pretty early to be here today. So Annabelle Luxford and Amelia Rose Watkinson, good job waking up. Looks like you got your coffee in because you are raring to go. Both of them going for the sprint points. Definite shout out to Amelia Rose for having an incredible season so far. She's been able to do some triathlons and has been just throwing down. So she's fit. She's feeling good. We just saw Laura Phillip go to the front. Let's see if she's got some something up her sleeve.
I bet she does. It's a lot of power that she has up her sleeve for sure. But so right now, 1.4K to go. They've got 2 sprints left, 1 under the KOM banner and 1 at the finish line. Right now we have Meredith Kessler rolling through the front of the group. We see Lisa Norton there on screen putting that effort in. She looks really, really smooth, that 90 RPM right in the zone that you want to be getting ready for a sprint. Lisa Norton, super, super smooth on a bike. Really impressive for someone that obviously is a very top level of triathlon. Annabelle Luxford right now rolling through the front of the group with Jackie Herring and Lisa Norton in that podium position right now, but just another few meters till they hit that last KOM banner. Super tight at the finish. Again, I do think it was Amelia Rose Watkinson, maybe Annabelle Luxford again. Let's see who they had. Watkinson, Palant, and Luxford. So those ladies putting in some pretty consistent sprints. As you said, bravo to them. Probably dark when they woke up not too long ago to be all warmed up and ready to go for the sprint on the KOM banners. So 9 points tie. Watkinson, Palant, Norton with 8, Siddall with 6, Luxford with 3 going into the last 500 meters of this points race, or first race of round 1. Laura Siddall at the front of the group right now. Jocelyn McCauley takes a quick little turn. Melanie Marr up there as well. 300 meters, they're going to take a hard right turn, and then the sprint line will be upon them. So positioning is going to be very important. All grouped up, all wide across the road here as they go. 180 meters to go. Paula Finley at the front of the group with Melanie Marr, Emma Palant, and right now it's Finley at the front, Palant, Marr, Siddall, and Nath. And let's see what we got there. It was all there. I couldn't really tell at the end, if I'm being honest there, but I think we might have had Paula Finley sneak it at the front. So yes, Paula Finley, we didn't see her get any of those intermediate sprints as far as I could have seen, but Paula Finley at the end puts herself where she needs to be. She wins the first race in the first round of the ZPro Tri Invitational Season 2 with Emma Palant in second, and Angela Nath, another one that we didn't really see throughout. So looked like the tactics for those two women were to save it for that last sprint.
I think that was pretty smart. I mean, they're all the top three, those are experienced Zwift racers. So they know their strengths. They went for the big points, and it may pay off. We're only going to find out by the end of round 3 here.
Yeah, absolutely good. So there's the points up there. We see Laura Siddall in 4th place, Moore in 5th place, Annabelle Luxford in 6th. So we're going to be able to start seeing where those intermediate points add up. I think Palant obviously is going to be pretty high up there, as well as Siddall, because they were playing around a fair bit, as well as Annabelle Luxford. So awesome result for those women. But Paula Findlay kind of out of nowhere, but she played it. She was watching. She was letting other people burn their matches on that last sprint underneath the KOM banner, and she put herself where she needed to be and put the effort in there. So here we go. We got more totals here. So overall points after we add up all of the intermediate KOM arch points and the finish line. We have Emma Palant with a pretty big lead, 5 points over Laura Siddall. Paula Findlay with the 20 points she earned at the finish. In 3rd place, Lisa Norton ending up with 19, and Amelia Rose Watkinson also with 19. So, Sarah, you can see right there, I would say 2 of the most aggressive athletes on the intermediate sprints were Lisa Norton and Amelia Rose Watkinson. And they just ended up in 4th, tied for 4th for points so far, where someone like Paul Findlay, who didn't spend that energy, ended up being in 3rd place in front of them.
This is the Zwift chess game, you know? Paula played it right, I think. She went in for the big points, and that obviously comes at a big cost because you're going hard, but it's easier to recover from one massive effort than it is repeatedly going for those sprints over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. And here we go with kind of a recap. Some of the action as we see our men and women cover that same course. A bunch of action underneath that KOM banner each time around. Made it exciting. But yeah, to me, Sarah, the most impressive thing is seeing how, and I think in the women's race, it was more dramatic. And here's the finish line shot of our first race. More dramatic on seeing the difference on clearly going for all those sprint points affected those athletes like Watkinson. And although Emma Palant had a great result out there as well, we can see here on screen kind of a replay of this first lap. But so I think that's going to start to add up to those athletes, and it's going to start to feel, their legs are going to start to feel heavy. I mean, if we saw an effect in that final sprint from the sprints earlier in that first stage, we're going to start seeing the effect of that first stage in these later 2 races. But a lot of action. I was super impressed with how great Amelia Rose Watkinson and Annabelle Luxford and Laura Siddall were at those intermediate sprints.
Yeah, no, it was fun. It's always fun to see people, you know, going for those sprints, going hard, turning themselves inside out. I mean, this is what racing is, and you have to be aggressive sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. And so this isn't being aggressive, but you need to plan ahead. But I do think the biggest part, and we're going to start seeing it, is how well these athletes recover in between these races. I mean, we're talking about recovering in between the KOM banners, you know, for the next sprint, but we're talking, you know, 10 or 15 minutes of cooling down and warming up for the next race. What do you think the approach would be? Is it always like staying on your bike the whole time, just super light spin, getting extra nutrition in, or what do you think? What do you think?
I would probably just be in a fetal position right now, you know, crying. But, you know, I think probably the best idea in terms of setting yourself up well to race is spinning out the legs, flushing, making sure you're on top of your hydration, get in some calories. But you also have to remember that you need to be, because as we've seen, they go hard from the gun. So you can't go too easy. It's good to let your heart rate drop, but you want to make sure it's back up before the gun goes off for the next race. So it's finding that fine balance between, you know, ensuring that your body has enough stimulus so that you can go hard. So you're not in that full rest mode.
No, I think that's smart. Actually, it's something, you know, well established. I'm not that smart, so I wasn't actually thinking about the making sure you're warmed up and ready to go. I think, as you said jokingly, I would probably be also in the fetal position till seconds before the race. But yeah, making sure you're warmed up and ready to go, but getting as much recovery in as possible. But yeah, no time for massages or anything crazy like that in between for these athletes. Not sitting in any recovery boots or anything, but staying on that bike, staying hydrated, and making sure they have the nutrition going in for race number 2. And race number 2 is coming right up. Not a lot of time to spare. So let's take a look at the course that we're going to be racing. So it's the London Classique, and we already have the men actually already out there, raring to go. So Anthony Casas there in the front, but we can look at that. It's one lap. This awesome little graphics our team put together. You can see the elevation gain. There's a fair bit of climbing. We'll call it lumpy. This course is lumpy, but there's right at about 5.5K, you see that kicker is pretty stiff, and that's a great opportunity for an athlete or a small group of athletes to get away because it's nice and flat on top with a descent over the end. But definitely a lot of action. The course is going to present some challenges, as well as obviously these athletes that are out on course kind of pushing each other. What do you think? Does that look hard, Sarah?
Well, it all depends on what your strengths are. Now, it would be a bold move to go at about 5K to go. That's still 8 kilometers of just grinding ahead of you. But like you say, if there are a few other people who are willing to take that risk to share some of that load, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw somebody like a Lionel go after it. He does like to shake things up. There are quite a few of these athletes who enjoy that. They actually relish in racing to be that person to just turn the screws on their competitors, make other people hurt.
Absolutely, and one of those athletes, and I know he's been out there doing it already, is Joe Skipper. He's one that, if you look at Zwift and your experience with Zwift racing, especially with this kind of field, and this is Joe Skipper, I believe, off the front of the group, putting in an effort to put other athletes on the back foot. So he's got a fair little gap there. But we know that it's almost impossible to go on a solo breakaway in Zwift, and certainly against a field like this that's working together to bring you back. But no matter how many times Joe Skipper tries to do it and fail, he's going to try it again as soon as he can. And that's why we love Joe Skipper, and that was a cool shot of him going away early in the race, just trying to get a little gap and go it alone. But sorry Joe, they didn't let you go alone this time, but maybe next time. It's probably going to be in another 100 meters. They'll try it again, so we'll see.
Well, there you see it in the professional cycling ranks. There are those athletes who will go on the long Tour de France stages. They go for it. They would get reeled in time and time again, but every once in a while they can stay away. So Joe, keep on doing it, not just for the fans, but for yourself. We love it.
Yeah, and there you go. Speaking of the devil, Joe Skipper, we got him on screen. He's also on the break, trying to get a small group to go away. Ben Canute, Lionel Sanders have bridged up to him. They have about a second gap, which isn't a lot, but if they keep working, they can maybe make that stick. But yeah, it looks like a second gap, and there are some athletes starting to struggle a little bit off the back of the group. That's Terenza Bazone, Tim Van Berkel, and Peter Hemmerich, about a second and a half off of that main group. That is a second off of those athletes, but it looks like actually everybody kind of got swept up there. But Lionel Sanders has his earphones on, he's grooving, and he's hurting some people.
That's what he loves to do. He loves hurting other people probably almost as much as he likes just hurting, making his legs burn. He loves it. And I think anybody who follows the sport, there's something so infectious about that. It comes out of such a genuine place of just trying to push boundaries. And you got to respect it.
Oh, absolutely. We love it. And that was probably what his FOMO was this morning. He was like, oh, man, I'm going to be missing out on some pain. I need to get in on this. But yeah, right now, Martin Van Riel, an athlete, Belgian athlete on the screen, he's working that effort, making sure he stays in the front. Didn't have the best first race, but he's looking to wipe that off. And hey, Sarah, can you take a guess who it is off the front of the group right now?
Yes, Joe Skipper. I love it.
He loves it. He loves it. He absolutely loves it.
So in the ITU racings, there are athletes like Martin Van Riel. He is the Joe Skipper of ITU, where he will go for these efforts off the front. These guys don't normally get to race together. I love it.
Right.
We're going to see whether or not Martin uses the same strategies. He's been riding a lot this summer, doing these epic, 200, 300K rides. We'll see if that's paying off in the Zwift platform. He has yet to show his hand. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen today.
Yeah, we'll watch it right now. Tim Don on screen as well. You know Tim Don pretty well. You guys work together with the Zwift Academy tribe, doing the mentors. You guys getting ready for some more of that this year?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now the qualification period has started for the Zwift Tri Academy. Tim is an absolute hoot. He's one of the funniest people in the sport, but also just this wealth of knowledge. He's an amazing mentor, and he's just great to have in the sport in whatever capacity. Obviously, as an athlete, he has accolades, abound, and I hope, sentimental favorite today, Tim Don. Do it for the mentors.
There you go. Do it for the mentors, Tim. Aaron Royal on screen right now. Another one of those Southern Hemisphere athletes that had to wake up pretty early in the morning to get involved and race with us. So we appreciate it, Aaron. Aaron had great performances last time around. You could see in that first race, he went over a couple sprints. He's got some good points going into this second race. Aaron's definitely one to put a good effort in. We appreciate him going around. Henry Skoman is on the screen there. We see him in the middle of the group. That athlete, obviously a bronze medalist at the Olympics. Sarah, I will say, I can't not say this every time I talk about Henry. I was the one person, I think, besides his family that picked him for the bronze medal at that Olympics. I won a bunch of money. I didn't actually win any money. But anyways, very talented. Side note, I digress. Very talented athlete. He's one that is underestimated, I think, on the bike. I've seen him do some non-draft legal racing, and he's very, very strong cyclist. So looking forward to seeing what he can bring to the table here in this invitational series here on Zwift. Jackson Laundrie, he had great performance, won one of the races our last series, and finished pretty high up in the overall standings. Jackson Laundrie I believe he won the Canadian National Championship race that they put on earlier this year. So Jackson Laundrie, very well-rounded athlete.
No, I think you're right. It's also important to point out that there's something slightly self-selecting about these group of athletes. They know they're strong cyclists. They know they can be in the mix.
Okay.
You have to be fairly confident and say, okay, I want to ride against the best cyclists in my sport on the Zwift platform, and it's going to hurt a lot, but I'm going to back myself. So we have, 20 men right now. All are very strong cyclists. You might not see them purely as cyclists, when they're out on the triathlon course, because somebody like Matt Hansen, who just came up on screen, great cyclist, known for his run. If you asked his competitors, what is the leg you most fear Matt Hansen on, they would say the run. But he's also extraordinarily strong. So it's great to see him be able to shine on the bike in just that way today.
Yeah, for sure. And it's super unique to put the athletes in that, with that kind of stress in these racing, because again, there is no swim and run. But I think, great point. And just a side note, Matt Hansen is a great runner, and he did race Ironman Florida just a few days ago. And I believe he went out in a 1:15 half marathon, ended up running a 2:40. So I imagine his legs are a little bit tender this morning. So seeing him putting that effort in at the front of the group is pretty darn impressive. But so we're 8.5 kilometers in, Sarah, 2.7K to go. Right now, Peter Hemmerich, a super strong cyclist in triathlon, but a very avid Zwifter. I think he was one of the first Zwifters to Zwifter triathletes to get level 50. Him and Lionel Sanders were, within a couple points of each other there for a long time. Ronnie Schildneck, one that we've seen in the series before. And what's different, Sarah, about this scratch race than the first race is I think we're seeing the athletes settle a little bit. Like there has been an opportunity for like just to be okay with, okay, I'm in the group, I'm going to do as little as I possibly can while in the group, and then the pace is only really accelerated when somebody like a Joe Skipper or somebody tries to go for a breakaway, because there aren't these points up for grabs in the middle. And you were right, nobody took my bad advice and tried to go for a solo breakaway, except Joe Skipper.
Well, I think this is the racing part. This is when you're watching each other, you're trying to anticipate the different moves. What makes this platform really fun is that you don't get the physical cues you would get in person. So if you are in a pack, you can hear people changing gears, you can hear them breathing hard, you can get all these physical cues. Lionel can't get a cue from Ben Canute, who's in a different part of North America. They're just trying to guess, and it makes it pretty exciting that they can't see each other's hands.
Oh, for sure. No, they absolutely can't. They all have an arrow power up at this point too. I haven't seen anybody use it yet. That would be something you would use if you were trying to get on a breakaway. It makes you more aerodynamic when you're out on your own, or certainly if it most likely comes down to a sprint, likely will. That is the power up that you're going to want to have going into that sprint. So worth noting that going into this sprint finish, this is going to end up a sprint with almost all our athletes. It does look like all 19 athletes are in the group. So very different than the sprint that we saw from that first race where it was right after a KOM and people were tired from going after all this. As David McNamee tries to get off the front, gets a half a second gap off the front of the group, hoping to catch everybody looking at each other. Good for, you're going to have to keep it rolling, but it looks like he's slowly getting pulled back. Tim Reed, one that didn't necessarily show himself all that much in the first series, has come by and actually come around him. So using David McNamee as a launching pad with 800 meters to go, Tim Reed has a gap, half a second gap on David McNamee, and then another half a second or a second and a half now to the group. So Tim Reed with a huge move. Did not expect this. He's got the hat on. That's not maybe the most aerodynamic thing in the world, but he's used his power up. But now is when we're going to be able to see if it was too early or right on time, as we see him in his Trek Segafredo kit and that hat that I do not think is team issue. But Tim Reed with a gap, 400 meters to go. He has a second left. He is absolutely crushing himself at the front of this race. Joe Skipper bringing him back with 200 meters to go. Joe Skipper gets to the front. The sprint is going to be, who's that coming around? It looks like that's not Joe Skipper. It was that Jackson Landry with timing over 11 watts per kilo as Mike Phillips tries to go. And right, oh my gosh, I believe
That was Sanders.
That was Mike Phillips. Was it Sanders?
No, it was Lionel Sanders. Yeah. He came on the outside, just pipped him out the line.
Oh my gosh. You're right. Lionel Sanders, absolutely by a very, very tiny, very tiny margin of victory there. Lionel Sanders over Jackson Landry. Sarah, I'm going to let you talk us through these results as we see them on screen.
Sure. Matt was rendered speechless. He was so flabbergasted by Lionel doing that well. So it looks like, going hard didn't really help Tim Reed that much, but he played the hand he had. Lionel Sanders, so experienced in this sort of stuff. He went hard for that sprint. He timed it perfectly. Jackson Landry hanging on for second in this round. And Mike Phillips, super strong, super consistent in third.
By those guys, Mike Phillips, always super consistent as an athlete. And Sarah, I'll let you talk us through that as well.
Yeah, so right now we have Lionel leading the finish line points. It's exactly the rankings that we had from the previous screen. It's going to be interesting to see what the cumulative point load is. We definitely saw most of these athletes in the mix in the previous race. So these are experienced Zwifters. They know when to go hard. They know when to, go for the points. And right now they're accumulating points. I think there are probably some sore, tired legs in the mix. Let's hope that they are able to spin it out, recover, and be ready for the last round or the last race of the day.
Yeah, very good call. And I mean, they're certainly going to be feeling it for sure. No doubt, as our women are getting ready for their race as well. But I think right about now, Sarah, is when these athletes realize, you know what? I spent a little too much energy just then. Or, you know what? This is going to be a lot harder than I thought maybe it was going to be. And that's why we were so excited to try this race series out, because I think it's something none of the athletes have ever done before. Certainly as triathletes, just racing, bike racing. Let's take a little bit of look of how this race planned out. But again, an athlete, Joe Skipper, every chance he gets, he goes off the front. Most of the race, we saw the group kind of sticking together and holding their paces as a group, and you could see that pretty well throughout. But we also had times where we had some other athletes trying to get away. We had Ben Canute doing his best to try to get away for a period of time, as we saw Joe Skipper do the same. On screen, I believe it was Mike Phillips tried to get away as well. So lots of effort being spent, just randomly trying to catch the other athletes off guard. But man, the big move of the day was Tim Reed really trying to time it perfectly. He ended up not being perfect timing, but Jackson Landry almost got him, and then at the end, it was Lionel Sanders kind of out of nowhere.
That was who knew that Lionel was going to be feeling so fresh after his hour record, but he's still feeling like he's frisky, he's ready to go, throw down some high-end power. Maybe Tim Reed, if he had been a bit more aero with his headwear, would have been able to stay away. But I think it's probably safe to say that timing was everything on today's stage. It was great to see the aggressive efforts early on, trying to break up the fields, but it came down to a group sprint and just trying to get the timing of producing that high-end power really was everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to head over to the women's race. They are out on course and attacking the same course we just saw the men go through the London Classique. And I'm curious to see, not knowing what's happening, Sarah, as we see the group together, if you were to guess, how do you think this race would go down? Do you think there's going to be a small group breaking away, or do we think we're going to end up at a sprint finish like we did in the men's race?
Just because I love to see people shaking things up, I would love to see a successful breakaway. I think there are some aggressive riders in there, but I also think we have some very smart riders who are, I would say, while I would love to see a breakaway, more likely than not, we're going to have similar tactics to the men's race. Some people trying some things out, seeing what kind of reactions there are in the group, maybe not fully committing, but just testing the waters, and then it all coming back together for that sprint finish.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, I think it's pretty darn risky to commit to a solo breakaway. I think if you can get a few athletes out there together, then you have a shot, but you are still risking getting caught at the end. Like Tim Reed was so close to winning 20 points, and I actually wasn't able to see exactly how far down he ended up, but he might have only gotten 10 points or 8 points because the whole field passed him, right? So it's much more risky kind of going at it alone, because you can definitely pay for that down the road.
Yeah, but no glory in just sitting in. I mean, you can get some good camera time if you go off the front. I'm just saying, ladies, if you're hearing me, do it for your fans. Just a little attack here.
Yeah, absolutely. You gotta go for it. Holly Lawrence at the front of the race and on screen there pushing big watts. Super stoked to have her involved in the series this go around. Holly Lawrence always one to push the pace on Zwift. She's got a lot of experience racing and training on Zwift, so stoked to see her out here doing it.
Yeah, like we've said before, it definitely pays to be an experienced Zwifter when it comes to racing, understanding when to utilize your power-ups, understanding how to read the course, and being able to play the game. Ultimately, this is a game platform. It's not what we typically think of when we think of gaming, but that's exactly what this is. And you do see a direct correlation between people who do a lot of the Zwift racing and their ability to have great results.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't just jump in. It is very different. And not only, I think you spoke to it earlier, not only are we asking triathletes that are used to riding their bike hard after a swim, but before a hard run, we're asking them to just bike race, but we're asking them to Zwift race as well, which is a completely different discipline. You've got to kind of know when to use power-ups. You got to know how to move around a group properly. You got to know different tactics. So definitely a lot of athletes outside of their comfort zone, and we're stoked to see them stretch that comfort zone with us, as we have kind of a standout from the last season or two, Imogen Simmons on screen, pushing that effort as she moves through the group up to the front.
Yeah, this is a very strong rider. She, I was pretty impressed to see last year. I believe she was third at the 70.3 World Championships on a absolutely brutal course in Nice. She has the legs. I believe she did the races in the spring. Is that correct? Well,
I believe
all
she did.
I know is
she did.
Yeah, she's strong. She has some Zwift experience, and it's going to be fun to see how she does over the 3 stages.
Yeah, absolutely. I think she'll do well, and I think those athletes that maybe haven't raced, especially in the ZPro Invitational in the past, you'll see maybe a different approaches once they get into the second week and the third week, because you learn so much as you get into the Zwift racing, and these professionals are certainly going to learn their lessons and move forward. Emma Palat on screen, pushing the big watch. She's always got something fun going on in her pain cave. Always feels like you're in a disco when you see Emma Palat riding her bike inside.
It definitely looks like it's a nightclub feeling going on. Same with Joe Skipper. Definitely credit to him for some interesting lighting going on. It was pinks and reds going on. I wasn't expecting that. My basement is very boring by comparison. I need to upgrade my lighting.
You do. I wasn't expecting that either. And I will say something else I wasn't expecting, and not because I don't think she's capable of it, but seeing Paula Finlay get the win stage because we didn't see her in those intermediate sprints. It was kind of a surprise to me to see her put herself up there. But as an athlete, I mean, we know she's a hammer on the bike, so no big surprise there. She just was playing tactics to go for the full 20 points and not mess around with the intermediate, and it worked out really well for her, as we have Sarah Crowley on screen in the aero position, pushing some big watts.
No, Matt, what do you make of athletes riding their TT bikes? Do you think there's a power difference in your ability to ride?
I would say for almost all athletes, you can generally get more power while being on a road bike, right? It just being more upright, your hips are a little bit more open, your chest is more open, you can get a little bit more oxygen, activate your glutes, that sort of thing. But there are some athletes that have aero positions they just feel more comfortable in. They feel like they can settle into it. I would argue that you still probably can't get quite as many watts out as you would if you were sitting up, but some athletes feel a lot more comfortable in that position, and that's what they use. What do you think?
Well, yeah, you ride the bike you're most comfortable on. I personally find, even when I'm up on my hoods on the TT bike, I can produce more power on a road bike. That just might be me and my hip angle. But ultimately, these athletes are making choices. They're very well informed as to what is the right choice for them. I think it's more of a personal preference that I like to Zwift mostly on a road bike, unless I'm doing specific, TT kind of efforts. But I find it fascinating to see which bikes athletes are going with.
Yeah, there we go. It's Amelia Rose Watkinson on screen there. You can see her bike choice as she's rolling about 90 RPMs at the front of the group. Very, very aggressive for her in that first race. It paid off pretty well. I think she was in the top 5 after her first standings. Right now we see Lisa Norden with a little gap off the front of the group, but 2 kilometers to go to see whose tactics paid off for. And don't forget, this isn't just about the tactics in this race, Sarah. It's about the tactics they used in the first race, because they might be fatigued if they were trying too hard on all those intermediate points.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if there are athletes we didn't see much of in the first rounds kind of stepping up and deciding, now's the time for me to show my hands. Now's the time for me to go and really try to get this stage, because the more of the building throughout the 3 races philosophy than trying to go for every single point.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see how that goes. Right now on screen we've got Lisa Norden at the front with Emma Plott and Kelsey Withrow, and then a group a little behind Melanie and Jocelyn McCauley. I would expect one of those athletes would be Jocelyn McCauley. She was one that was kind of a standout in the last series. We haven't seen a bunch out of her yet, but I wouldn't be surprised to see her get across that line pretty far up in the group. What do you think?
Yeah, Jocelyn was 3rd in the series last time around. She definitely understands how to Zwift, and very, very strong cyclist. Again, people like to play to their strengths, and I think she's going to do quite well in the 3rd race. Maybe she's one of these builders, get stronger every time, get stronger every race. We're gonna find out.
Oh, we are certainly going to find out, no doubt. There we go. So we've gone under a kilometer to go. We've got Lisa Norden there pushing the pace in the front of that group with Emma Plott as well. Grupo Compacto, I believe is what they say. I think something like that. I don't know. I'm not pro on that side of things, but the group is to get 5 years to go after 10.5 kilometers of racing. We're going to see who gets the most points. Again, for race number 2, it's going to be 20 points for first across the line, all the way down to 1 point. And this is going to be very, very important to see who carries the most points over into round 2 of the series. But right now, it looks like we have an athlete going off the front of the group. Super aggressive move here with 170 meters to go. I believe it's going to be a tiny bit too early. We have another athlete coming up from behind, coming around the side, and a group, and we're still going to have one more, I think, get past here at the last second, but it was Emma Plott in the front, and right at the end, I believe she gets passed by Imogen Simmons and one other athlete. I will apologize, I did not see, but I believe it was Amelia Rose Watkinson and Imogen Simmons going around Emma Plott, maybe with Melanie Moore as well. So we will get results here on screen, but wow, impressive. Emma Plott going for the long solo flyer. She ends up 4th place with Amelia Rose Watkinson pipping at the line Imogen Simmons and Melanie Moore. So look at that. MBK Kessler getting across the finish line in 5th place, Paula Finley in 6th. Pretty tight, but a very long, kind of drawn out sprint there, Sarah.
Yeah, if you had asked me, I would have thought Imogen got it. Honestly, look at that time differential. Amelia Rose just barely pipped her at the line. I saw Melanie in there. Honestly, it was just bodies everywhere. Pretty exciting. I mean, you can't see me. You could see me, but I was just jaw dropped. I'm still a little speechless. That was absolutely incredible.
I will say, and Sarah doesn't get speechless that often, so that was impressive to see. But that would be a great attempt by Emma Plott, as she almost had it. And I honestly, I thought Imogen Simmons got it as well. And again, kind of new to Zwift racing, so great performance from Imogen to get across the finish line 2nd. Amelia Rose Watkinson, if we thought the sprint for the men's race was close, I mean, this was a hair. That was incredible. I think it was 0.009. So 20 points to Watkinson, 19 Simmons, Moore with 18, Plott with 17, and Kessler with 16, Finlay with 15. So a lot of the athletes that kind of showed themselves in that first race are still getting those points in that second race. So I think once we see the kind of the totals to this point from round one, we are going to see that it's pretty tight overall in the women's race, maybe even a little bit more so than the men's race. But again, similar. I think you talked to it, Sarah. You expected the women's race to be to play out similarly to the men's race, and it did.
Yeah, I would say this time we didn't see quite as many attempts to go off the front. I think Lisa Norton made a couple of attempts, but overall it was a group finish with a big sprint at the end. Definitely a nail biter. I think that was pretty exciting. Emma Pollan, credit to you. I think we're all secretly cheering you on, but it definitely made it pretty exciting to see that. Yeah, that was neck and neck.
That was ridiculously close. Amazing racing from the women. And again, I think once they were a few kilometers in, they could tell it was going to be a sprint finish, but it's still not easy. And you can have your game plan going into that 500 meters to go, but then you're just reacting. And great work from Emma Pollan going for it, and then Imogen Simmons thinking she timed it perfectly, only to get just overtaken by just a little bit by Amelia Watkinson. So we've got the men's race started. We're going to go ahead and jump in race and look at the standings going into the final race of round one. There are going to be 20 points up for grabs at the end of this stage, but then whoever has the most points at the end of these three races will carry 20 points over into the second round. I know it sounds difficult, but it's not that hard. But right now we're looking at round one. We had Lionel Sanders is in the lead right now with 47 points, over 46 with Anthony Casas, James Cunnama with 40, Jackson Landry with 38, tied with Mike Phillips with 38. So, Sarah, I wasn't lucky enough to have you along with me. I was stoked to have Sean Jefferson the first go around, but you would not have noticed that all these names are people that really showed themselves in our first series. So really cool to see these athletes stepping up again. Lionel Sanders and Anthony Casas just continue to push each other throughout the series the first time and again here in this series. And it's still pretty tight. I think with this non-drafting time trial, anybody is up for grabs in the points. And right now, no real surprise, Lionel Sanders coming off the hour record for Canada. You know what? The guy's pretty used to riding on his own in a time trial. So Lionel Sanders off right now in the lead in this time trial. But again, there's no tactics involved. This is a time trial. As many watts as you can hold from the start to the finish. So it might seem a little disorienting seeing these other athletes behind, but there's no tactics. This is a time trial. But right now, what's so cool about Zwift is the reason we do time trials a minute is because, in the real world, is because you can't have athletes draft off each other. It's an advantage. But in Zwift, there's no drafting. Our techs just push the button, no drafting, and now we can have a kind of real-time event where you can see who's in the lead and kind of tell the story a little bit better. So right now, Lionel Sanders 2.5 seconds in front of Anthony Casas, and looks like 4.5 over Ben Canute. Jackson Landry 6 seconds back with James Cunnama right there as well. Matt Hansen all in 6 seconds, as well as Tim Don really showing good performance so far today with Mike Phillips, Ronnie Sheldnick at 7.5 seconds, and Joe Skipper at 7.5 seconds.
Yeah, I think, like you said, what makes this exciting is you can't do this in real life. You can't have a time trial, a group time trial without draft. So being able to manipulate the platform to do something totally unique is absolutely incredible. And here's, the upside to having other people around is you can key off of them. So right now, all those riders, they're looking at the time gaps. They're trying to do two things. They're trying to moderate their own effort, knowing what power they can sustain, over the course of this race, but also trying to do the mental math of, okay, this athlete is X number of points behind me. I need to make sure I stay ahead of them, trying to use other athletes as carrots,
trying to, use that psychological boost that you get from having other people on the course near you that you wouldn't be able to do in real life for a time trial. Not in the same way.
Yeah, no, I think that's great points for sure. And Lionel Sanders showing us he knows how to do it, but his gap already coming down a little bit. Anthony Costas is reeling back Lionel Sanders. Lionel Sanders holding about 6 watts per kilo there at the moment. Anthony Costas matching that. He is 1.5 seconds behind. Ben Canute still holding in at 3rd place. James Kunema in 4th place. And what else is interesting about this time trial, Sarah, is that some of these athletes that, as we spoke about, don't have as much Zwift racing experience, we know they know how to time trial because that's what triathlon is all about. I mean, certainly ITU racing isn't necessarily that, but most of those athletes have participated in some sort of time trial race. So they know, you know what, how many watts can I hold the entire time? So right now we see Anthony Costas virtually on the wheel of Lionel Sanders. Again, no draft in this. He's not getting any advantage, but he comes up and gets over the shoulder and looks like he's going to try to go ahead and pass Lionel Sanders. That will not be something Lionel Sanders wants. He's one that wants to stay in the front. So I think Lionel's going to see if he can half wheel Anthony Costas as long as he possibly can.
Now, what is it, a 2-point differential between the two of them currently in the overall standings? Yeah, 2 points.
I think it was 2 points. Yeah. It's pretty tight.
So they're definitely watching each other. They want to best the other person because that could mean that they win today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all up for grabs. They're going to need an athlete to get in between them to tie it up, but it's going to be super tight for sure. And I think Anthony Costas is one athlete that probably was like, oh man, seriously, Lionel's racing? I didn't think he was going to race, but also an athlete that is like stoked to put himself against Lionel. And that's what to me is so unique, especially in this current time in 2020 to Zwift racing, is these athletes haven't been able to race each other, right? So to be able for Anthony, I actually don't know where he is currently in the world, but he spends a lot of time training in Spain. You know, maybe he's in Spain right now, maybe he's in Italy, he spends time training there. Lionel Sanders is in Tucson and they're racing neck to neck and it feels like a normal event. And to me, that is really, really cool and what excites me most about these races.
Yeah, absolutely. To be able in our own homes to race people around the world is something that's pretty exceptional.
For sure. And let's not even talk about... Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I was going to ask about what kind of movement we're seeing behind them. It looked like things were staying pretty stable. Some jockeying between Ben Canute and James there. So for 3rd and 4th, I believe. Okay.
Yeah, so right now on the info I have on screen, and we can see the climb, kind of how it progresses through. Obviously, it gets a little bit steeper as we get closer to the finish. But info I have on screen, James Kunema, you're right, and Ben Canute are kind of battling it out. Tim Don is up there with him as well. Matt Hansen within a second of them, as is Mike Phillips. And then at 11 seconds back, we have Joe Skipper, Jackson Laundry. 15 seconds back is Aaron Royal with Ronnie Schildneck. Sebastian Kienle looks to also be about 16 seconds back. And then at 24 seconds is Peter Hemrick, David McNamee. And then at 30 plus seconds is Terenzo Bozzoni and Henry Skoman. But right now the battle, the back and forth of Anthony Costas and Lionel Sanders. And that's awesome because, again, there is no drafting in this. The draft button has been pushed, essentially, for lack of a better term. So there's no advantage to these two athletes. So seeing them pass each other and pass each other back is so cool to me because it's not like they're getting an advantage when they've been passed. It's just they are dosing out their energy almost identically right now. And if I had to guess, at some point, I don't think it's going to be a small adjustment. I think at some point they're going to be very, very close, but that's just me guessing, I guess.
Yeah, we'll have to. We still have 6.5 kilometers of racing. Things are gonna get shaken up. I know that much. I know that much about racing. Oh, looks like Sebastian Kienle has moved into the top 10, so he might have just been moderating his effort. he knows he's a very smart, very data-aware athlete. So he may say, okay, I know what I can sustain power-wise for this sort of course, and maybe athletes are going to blow up ahead of me. So it's going to be interesting to see an athlete like that who's that experienced, so aware of data, being maybe just playing the long game instead of going hard from the start.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Sarah, because I think something that we don't necessarily think about, like I'm talking about how it's so cool and unique that we have a non-drafting time trial, and the best athlete will win, but it's still, for those athletes, it's still disorienting because it could possibly bring you out of what are your best tactics. When you're doing a time trial that everybody's set a minute apart, you're looking at your watts and you're doing the power you can do. In this situation, Lionel's doing that, and then Anthony Costas comes around him. He's like, what the heck, man? No, I got to go harder. So like all these other athletes could be burning these matches way too early, and I think you're right. In a time trial, if you've ever done a time trial, you know that if you go out too hard, things will get pretty gnarly. And you want to be the person in the back thinking, I haven't even gone hard yet. Like, I can't wait. And then the last 5K or whatever the time is, if you can really put your foot on the accelerator or push down the throttle, you can really make a big gap. So to your point, Sarah, Kienle being 16 seconds back with 7.5K to go is absolutely nothing if he's paced properly and the other athletes have not.
Yeah, he's already moved up to ninth, so I think I'm gonna say we're gonna see some more movement from him. It's pretty easy to go too hard in these sorts of situations. If you are a time trial cyclist yourself, if you've ever watched one, it's actually, I'm not gonna say it's entertaining to go down to a local time trial, but if you want to see people blow up and just suffer the tail end of a race, it's something. It's something. It happens frequently.
It certainly is. And so there we go. Sebastian Kienle on screen. You can see there's no question that he's putting in a ton of effort. Look at him absolutely getting after it. That is what we're used to seeing Sebastian doing as he moves through the field. So they've gone through, they've ridden 8.7 kilometers and 6.9 to go. Sebastian Kienle is moving his way through the group. He's past Joe Skipper, and again, he's paced himself pretty darn well. And if there was a course that I would have said favors an athlete like Sebastian, it would certainly be a course like the one that we're attacking here at the end. And talking about pacing, he's now coming up on Jackson Laundrie, who had a great result. And if you remember back, correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but 3 or 4 kilometers into this, he was in 3rd and 4th place. So, Jackson Laundrie might have been one of those athletes that went out a little bit too hot. And now he's, if he looked in his rearview mirror, he would see Sebastian Kienle coming up on him pretty darn quickly. But the situation is still the same. Up at front, Lionel Sanders, Anthony Costas. You could throw a blanket or a towel or some sort of covering over them. That's how close they are.
No, it's really smart, because today all of the glory might come down to which of the two of them comes out ahead. So of course they're going to be watching each other, not just to win the stage, but to win overall today. There we go, Joe Skipper back in his mood lighting. It's like I said, he makes me jealous that my basement's so boring. Just look at that. It's absolutely glorious.
It is glorious in Joe Skipper's basement. Awesome stuff. Great work, Joe Skipper, putting that effort in. He has been passed, but he's still in top 10 positions. We'll remind everybody that the equipment is neutralized on Zwift for this race, so there's no aero advantage for one bike over another bike. Everybody's wheels are the same. So aerodynamic advantage, all of that. Level playing field. Also level playing field, as I've said before. It looks right now Lionel Sanders might be on the wheel of Anthony Costas. You can tell he's not, because he's getting gapped actually in the moment pretty quickly, and that would not happen if the drafting was enabled. You would see Lionel Sanders just kind of suck right in there and be there. One thing we haven't talked about, we've just been talking about those two athletes coming up strong from behind. James Cunnama hitting 6 watts per kilo. He's coming up. He's going to be on the shoulder of Lionel Sanders here pretty darn soon as we see Tim Reed on screen. He is 1 minute and 45 seconds behind, but looking stylish as always. Not him in real life on the left. He'd never look stylish, although he's got his beautiful family with him. On the right, he's got the style for sure. But Tim Reed, always a great personality in the sport, family man, having his kids cheer him on throughout his time in the pain cave today as Lionel Sanders gets back up onto Anthony Costas' shoulder.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see James bridge this gap. And like you said, I wouldn't say he came out of nowhere, but he was about 7 seconds back before we cut to the screen previously. That was a nice gap that he closed. Once he gets in there, he's going to have that psychological boost from having these two athletes to key off of. Maybe he's played his cards right, and that he's looking for the win on this race. I believe he came into the stage ranked 4th. So I don't think points-wise, if these three are contending for the podium on this stage, I don't believe James can win, but maybe we can have somebody do the math, even if he wins this stage. But it definitely will help him clinch a podium position overall today.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is about, these 3 races in this first round, and it's also about obviously the weeks on top of each other. So consistency is going to pay as James Cunnama makes it a group of 3. Again, no drafting, so no advantage to being in this group, but definitely advantage for James Cunnama, who seems to, if I was now in this situation, a betting man, I would bet on James Cunnama because he's clearly paced himself to where he's had enough energy to close that gap, as you said, Sarah, that was around 10 seconds or so, and moved back up and is comfortably, and I will say with big air quotes, sitting in on the back of these 2 athletes in front, because again, there's no drafting right now. The drafting button has been turned on, for lack of a better term, and again, everything is equalized. So James Cunnama right behind these first 2 athletes, and then we have a 10-second gap to Ben Canute, 15 seconds to Matt Hansen and Mike Phillips, Tim Don right in there as well. Jackson Laundrie still holding off Sebastian Kienle, 18 seconds back to Kienle's 22, and Joe Skipper rounding out the top 10. But right now it is an absolute battle, 3.5 kilometers to go. Things are definitely going to start stinging a little bit in the legs for these 3 athletes, but they are fighting it out. After 17 minutes of time trialing, a second separates 3 athletes.
No, it's definitely gotten a bit more exciting with a third athlete in that mix. And honestly, looking at an athlete like Ben Canute, who knows, he might be able to close some of that gap and make it even more exciting. Maybe James lit a match too soon to be able to close that gap, and Ben will be able to catch him. We're only going to find out as this plays out. Trying to moderate effort, it could be possible that James spent a little bit too much to be able to catch up those 2 guys, and now it looks like Lionel has a nice gap on both Anthony and James. So he is just turning up the dial. 3K to go. He is putting the hammer down, wanting to definitively win this race, I think.
I think Lionel's maybe going back to the hour record, being like, man, this is only 20 minutes. I did this for an hour. Brutal. I assumed maybe he hadn't paced it that conservatively, but that's the cool thing about time trials, is you don't know if the other athletes have also been holding back, even though they're at the front of the race. So Lionel Sanders clearly had a fair bit left in the tank and pretty quickly has gotten 3 seconds to the front. And one thing that is good to remember, to remind ourselves, Sarah, is that yes, this is a time trial, but this gap doesn't matter at all. Right? So it's points. So Lionel only has to win by a second. So it's possible he's riding next to Costas being like, I don't need to go any harder than this. I'll just go harder when I need to. So that's one thing to be reminded of. It's just who crosses the finish line first. But it looks like Costas is slowly starting to bring Lionel Sanders back with 2.3 kilometers to go. Sarah, you asked about the points. Right now it is 1 point difference between Lionel Sanders and Anthony Costas at 46 and 47 points. So if Anthony Costas wins this, he will go in and tie Lionel Sanders for the lead. James Cunnama is in third place, so it's kind of awesome that it's first, second, and third on course right now. So points up for grab amongst those top three men.
Yeah, I also want to point out there's been some movement behind. So we've seen some guys fall back a little bit, others move up. So the race isn't just for the podium. You have to keep in mind this is a multi-week series. So you want to do well in every single stage. These guys who are battling it out for 6th or 7th, that could be a big difference down the road. You don't want to let up on any stage. You want to try to maximize the number of points you can get every single time you are on the start line. And it looks like these athletes are absolutely doing that. They are fighting, whether or not they're fighting for 8th or they're, Anthony and Lionel Sanders having an absolutely epic battle at the front.
Oh, it's awesome. Look how hard Lionel Sanders is going there. Definitely wants to make sure he gets across the finish line first, obviously to make sure he gets the maximum points for today, but also he likes to win. He doesn't like to lose, but he's got Anthony Casas trying as hard as he can to make sure that he does lose. So right now, Anthony Casas, again, on that wheel, but no drafting in effect today. So it's mano y mano, so to speak, tied at 0 seconds gap with James Cunnama 2 seconds behind. Look at that shot. James Cunnama just trying to claw himself back as Anthony Casas goes to the front again. And the question is, was that effort by Lionel Sanders too aggressive to get those 2 or 3 seconds that quickly? Lionel Sanders hanging on, but seconds back. Man, it is just a body blow after body blow for these two athletes at the front of the race, Sarah.
No, I think they're chewing on their handlebars right now. It's getting painful. They can't wait for it to be over so they can just curl up on the floor because they are throwing it all out there today. They're definitely working hard for this race. There's no question. And you got to love the back and forth, the mind games that you're trying to play virtually with other competitors. It keeps it exciting and it keeps me engaged. I know that much.
Yeah, there you go. And that's Mike Phillips and Matt Hansen having a little battle. Those two are fighting out for top 5 points. But we got 670 meters to the finish of this race. And it looks like Anthony Casas is opening up a gap. He now has 2 seconds on Lionel Sanders. So again, if it's to the front and crosses the finish line first, it will be a tie, I believe. We'll have to go back. I'm not very good at math, I will admit it. But he points to move into the tie for the lead. But Lionel Sanders now 3 seconds back. James Cunnama 9. So the person that was holding back or found something extra special when they didn't know they had it seems to be Anthony Casas, an athlete that showed his great strength in our last series, and he showed it certainly in triathlon racing in the past, but hasn't necessarily, triathlon is very different than bike racing and certainly Zwift racing, but Anthony Casas has timed it perfectly as pushing almost 7 watts per kilogram, 170 beats per minute is his heart rate, and he's at the front of this race, 100 meters to go, and he is undoubtedly going to collapse onto his bike when he crosses that finish line, but Lionel Sanders trying to keep it close. And here we go. They are coming under the banner, and it is Anthony Casas with Lionel Sanders bridging back at the last second to get within 1.5 seconds. Again, the gap doesn't matter. It's just going to be points. So Anthony Casas finishes with 20 points. Lionel Sanders is going to get 19, and James Cunnama coming across the line in third place after a hard-fought battle to bridge back to those top 2 athletes and then get gapped there a little bit at the end.
Yeah, I think it's really a testament to Anthony's effort there towards the end that he was able to put almost 17 seconds into James Cunnama towards the finish, because remember they were together more or less with not that long before the finish line, and to be able to put 17 seconds in, that tells you Anthony was pushing hard. I would like to see that power profile.
There
Big
you go.
watts.
Yeah,
that's
awesome.
all I know. Big watts.
huge watts. And so I've got people telling me, because we've got hundreds of mathematicians on staff here at Zwift just to calculate these points totals. But so it does look like it is now a tie on points between Anthony Costas and Lionel Sanders. But because he goes back to finish placings over the races, Anthony Costas will get the win on the first round. So he will get 20 points on the day. But look at those average watts on screen along with those results. Really, really impressive work by those athletes. Crazy racing. Yeah, good stuff. Okay, here we go. Here's the points. 20 points for Costas, Sanders 19, James Cunnama 18, Canute 17. Laundry holds off. Mike Phillips gets 16 over Mike Phillips's 15. So that's going to, as we see our points totals through the series, or for this first round, you'll see that is actually pretty equal. I think Mike Phillips and Jackson Laundry are pretty tight, as well as Ben Canute. So very tight racing, not only for that podium with Costas, Sanders, and Cunnama, but behind Canute, Laundry, and Phillips, we're keeping things really tight over that race. But here we go. Here's a kind of replay of how things panned out in that trial, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm sure they're all hurting right now from putting in, like you said, that was some really high average wattage, about 5.5 watts per kilo, if I'm correct, if I recall.
Yeah.
That's nothing to sniff at, because keep in mind, they did 2 stages before this one. So they went into this with some degree of fatigue from chasing sprints, from just pushing hard throughout those 2 stages, and then you're expected to maintain, threshold wattage for this stage, and then try to find a little something special the last few kilometers. It's really, they're going to be quite tired, I'm guessing.
Oh, it's brutal. And I think you'll probably have athletes that are like going back to the drawing board on what they can do differently next week and be like, you know what? I don't need to go after every KOM sprint the first one. Or, you know what? Maybe I do need to do that because the points are so important. But crazy watching these 3 athletes that were on screen, James Cunnama, Sanders, and Anthony Costas really getting after it. And at the end there, I really thought Lionel had it with 3K to go because he got that gap so quickly. It just seemed like he was waiting for it. But Anthony Costas had his number and was able to finish a 2.5 seconds in front of Lionel Sanders. So amazing stuff. Some stuff we did not see, Sarah, was it looked like Aaron Royal paced himself also and passed Sebastian Kienle just in the last little bit for 9th place. Sebastian Kienle ended up 10th. Joe Skipper in 11th. Tim Don, to me, had a really good round today, finishing in 8th place. So I think once we see the overall standings, you might see Tim Don getting up there. So here we go. Here's our race totals. We're going to have Anthony Costas, who, again, we go back to race finishes. He's going to go ahead and get the win for that tie with Lionel Sanders in 2nd place. James Cunnama is 58 points, so in 3rd place. Jackson Laundry finishes in 4th, with Mike Phillips in 5th, Ben Canute in 6th, Aaron Royal in 7th, Ronnie Shilnek in 8th place, just ahead of Tim Don and Matt Hansen. So now these points will then go forward, and we will have a total of 20 points will be awarded for this first day of racing. So Anthony Costas will have 20 points going into the series total, Lionel Sanders 19, James Cunnama 18, and so on. And so on. And I promise I'm learning just along with you guys, but I think the points will make sense. And why we decided to go that way is just able to have all these different races and provide these athletes with a new challenge and to give them something to kind of think about as they go through and dose out their energy enough. We're going into the last race for the women, same event that we just saw the men take part in, and here are our totals going in. Emma Pallant, 45 points, so pretty good advantage. If she's dosed her energy well, she should be able to hold on to this lead if she has a good time trial. Amelia Rose Watkins and Laura Sedal really playing it really well, I think, with how she played that first race and obviously a sprint in the second race. She finds herself just 2 points off of 2nd place. In 3rd place with Paula Finlay with a great win on the first stage, and 5th place on the second stage, gets 35 points. So she's in 4th place right now, and Melanie Marr in 5th place in 34. So to me, what stands out, Sarah, is that 2nd place to fifth place are only separated by 4 points. So I think Palant is in a pretty good spot, but we could really see things go kind of upside down in the overall standings from second place to fifth place. But I mean, Laura Philipp, she's getting after it.
Yeah, no, I think so. Laura Phillips, somebody that I would have picked for a great race today, and she may have just been timing it for this stage. You know, she's an extremely strong time trial cyclist, very good about understanding power and moderating effort. So I think she's going to have a good one. She feels she's going off the gun pretty confidently. It's going to be exciting to see what happens. Whether she can crack into the top 10 for the overall standings based on today's performance, who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, Laura Philipp, definitely no surprise to see her at the front of a time trial event. And honestly, I mean, no surprise really to see Meredith Kessler up there as well. But man, she early on, she's 5K in second place. She's only a second behind Laura Philipp, but a second in front of Melanie Moore, who's shown great experience in Zwift racing and certainly on time trials as well. You know, that's an athlete that's not easy to be in front of. So right now our podium positions for the women's non-drafting time trial hill climb are Laura Philipp in first place, Meredith Kessler holding on in second, with Melanie Moore in third. The race leader so far, series leader so far, Emma Palant, is in sixth place. So she's right about where she needs to be, considering that Laura Philipp or Meredith Kessler are not that close to her in the overall standing. So she's in a pretty good position to hold on to her lead. But tell us a little bit about Annabelle Luxford and what you might expect out of her on this time trial, Sarah.
So Annabelle Luxford, she is a Zwifter. She's been doing some of the races and strong cyclist. I think she probably, I was not surprised to see her going for some of the sprint points early on, but I think she probably understands what kind of effort that she can maintain over the course of this distance. And she's staying within her power. She's one of those athletes who, you know, is very aware of herself and her efforts. Not going to get caught up in the racing around her, and it's going to be interesting to see how she maintains over the distance of this stage. No, I do have to point out. So Meredith Kessler did an Ironman this past weekend. So the fact that she is currently sitting in second is pretty impressive, because I don't know about you and your legs after an Ironman, but I would be hard pressed to be doing an all-out time trial only a few days afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's a good call. If there's anybody that could do it, it's Meredith Kessler. I would say she has pretty hardened legs, so to speak. And I will say, at a certain point after an Ironman, it hurts so much that, like, going easy hurts too, so might as well just go hard. But clearly that's giving myself too much credit, because that does sound kind of impossible. But right now on screen, we've got Emma Palant and Jackie Herring. Jackie Herring putting out 250 watts, 87 RPMs, putting good effort in. She's sitting in sixth position right now, just 2 seconds behind Emma Palant, and a few seconds in front of Angela Nath. If I remember correctly, Angela Nath was about sixth. Yeah, she's in sixth place overall going into the last stage. Definitely for her to get up there, but Emma Palant right now in the lead, and she's going to do her best to hold on to that lead through this race.
Yeah, it's definitely impressive to see her being so aggressive in the early stages and positioning herself well. Somebody like Jackie Herring, very strong cyclist, but we haven't seen as much of her today. So maybe today she is her day to shine. So she's currently in sixth. Maybe she's just realizes that, okay, the high-end power, the high-end sprints, that's not my thing. But this hard grinding threshold effort, this is my bag, baby, and I am going to maximize points on this stage.
Yeah, I think that's smart. You got to play to your strengths. You got to kind of protect your weaknesses as much as you can, but certainly play to your strengths when possible. And Meredith Kessler gets up on the wheel of Laura Philipp, and they're actually just 1 second now ahead of Melanie Moore with 7.5 kilometers to go. And again, I will make sure I continue to remind you, because it's something that we're not used to seeing in time trial. The there's no drafting right now. So the advantage of a draft built into Zwift has been turned off. So these 3 athletes are racing each other, even though it looks like they're in a position where they're going to get an advantage or in a pace line, so to speak. They're all just putting out watts versus watt right now. So no drafting. All the equipment has been neutralized, so everybody has kind of the same platform, and whoever wins this race will be the person that has out. And it's not just about putting out the best average power. As you know, Sarah, in a time trial, it's about putting out the power where it means most and where it's most efficient, right? So putting out huge watts on the flat and then not putting out as many watts on the climb, but having a better, higher average won't be good. So you'll see these athletes maybe turn on and off the gas as to what the terrain calls for as they reach it.
Well, it's also interesting. We have a side-by-side comparison of Laura Philipp and Meredith Kessler, where Laura was riding about 90 cadence. Meredith was a lot lower. It was about high 70s, I think. And there is a different cardiovascular load based on you're doing a bit more of an aerobic effort. It's a little less strength based if you are doing a higher cadence. So if you're riding at 100 cadence, it's easy to have higher power, but it comes at a bit more of an aerobic cost. So that might play that may play as a factor for a stage like this, where it's a bit more efficient to really be drawing on your strength and to be doing that lower cadence effort. But we'll see. Right now we have 3 women who are riding basically neck and neck. They have different strategies. It's going to be really fascinating to see what happens over the next few kilometers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was cool to see. And obviously this race is a race in its own, and these athletes are putting in the effort. But to me, what reminded me in that men's race, and again, this is a new discipline we've never seen before, right? Where your competitor is next to you, but you're not getting an advantage. So what's cool is it can be tactical, again, because the gap doesn't matter. All that matters is the points at the finish line. So I at first thought there's no tactics, but there kind of are, because you could be you only need to be going as hard as you need to so that everybody thinks you're going hard. And if, like, Laura Philipp could just have another gear right now and just be waiting till the climb gets harder, or vice versa, right? You could be trying to fake out the other athlete and hoping they just kind of mail it in. So again, I underestimated the amount of tactics that could be going in. In the end, they're all probably just going as hard as they possibly can. But I'd like to think that there's some crafty athletes out there.
This is racing. There's always a little craftiness going on. That's awesome. That's why we don't just race against ourselves. It's the fun of it. Is you really are trying to anticipate the moves of your competitors. You are trying to play to your strengths. You're trying to understand how to maximize your avatar within the game, because again, there is a gamification part of Zwifting, and you're playing with all these different factors, and that's what racing is. It's dynamic, it's exciting, and it keeps us on the edges of our seats today. That's for sure.
Yeah, certainly does. And I will have to ask, Sarah, do you have like a tiny bit of FOMO? Like a tiny bit?
Totally. So I love the way I talk about it is I hate watching races, because I want to be out there, but I also can appreciate how hard these athletes are working. It's really fun to watch. But yeah, I enjoy racing. I love herding. I know that they're going to feel so good when they're done with this. I mean, they're going to be a pain, but that feeling of accomplishment after just turning yourself inside out is something that's really special. And honestly, I think anybody who rides on Zwift on this platform, you understand that's part of the fun of it, is just riding against other people, by yourself, whatever you do, just going hard and having fun, whether it's in your basement with Joe Skipper's fun lights, or it's in my basement, which is a little bit more boring. we're all on the same platform, just trying to crush ourselves to be able to ride like Laura Phillip is right now.
Oh, that's so awesome! I love it. I love it. We're gonna have to spice up your basement. I think we'll send you some sporty lights for your next trainer session. So worth noting, I'm gonna look a little bit right now. Take nothing away from Laura Phillip, Meredith Kessler, Melanie Moore. Just as we had in our race just a bit ago, are battling it out. I mean, they're within a second of each other, all at 4.3 watts per kilogram, matching each other pedal stroke for pedal stroke. Awesome to see. Because this is a series, we see Ruth Assel, who just came off of a awesome performance at Ironman Florida just a few days ago, setting the bike course record at 4:32, which is mind-blowing as far as I'm concerned. That's super impressive work from her. So definitely tired legs, but she's putting in a great effort as well. But as I was saying, if we look further down the list, because this is a series race, that some of those athletes that were pretty high up in the race totals so far, Amelia Rose Watkinson, she's riding in 11th place right now. Laura Siddall riding in 13th place right now. Lisa Norden in 12th. So we're going to see some big movement. Melora was in 5th place. She's going to move up a lot because she was behind Laura Siddall, Amelia Rose Watkinson. We also have Paula Finlay. She started this last stage in 4th. Right now she's riding in 9th, so it's going to end up being, I think, pretty tight. You might see a Melanie Moore and a Paula Finlay move all the way up into the podium, depending how those athletes, I spoke of Watkinson, Siddall, how they do moving forward. But those athletes, it's tight. There's not a lot of seconds. I mean, right now I'm looking, actually, top 10 is only separated by 20 seconds. So these women are all right together with 3K to go. And as we saw in the men's race, a lot can happen. But point being, these standings could get kind of upended. Right now, Emma Pallant, I believe, is in a pretty safe spot. She's got a lot of points to give up, but very, very exciting races at the front. But then also, kind of when you start looking at point totals, this women's race could be kind of thrown upside down. Right now, we see Melanie Moore and Laura Phillip at the front of the race. It looks like a little bit of gap. Like Meredith Kessler is now just a little over a second behind these two athletes.
Yeah, this women's race, like you said, is very dynamic. I think we're having a lot more, because you're only having a 20-second gap between 1st and 10th, and the women, many of the women who were in the rankings, not in the top 10, who I can't do the math. You have all the Zwift geniuses in your ear doing all the computations, but I think that's what makes this so exciting, is knowing that there is a lot at stake right now. There is a lot at stake for the overall rankings for today, based on a few seconds here or there. Now, not to take anything away from the men here, but I would argue that this is actually a more exciting race.
Oh, please, by all means, take as much away from the men as you'd like. They deserve it. But yeah, no, I'd agree, because we have three women within 2.5 seconds of each other, but we also have this overall standings that looks to be, I would say, upended, but it does look like Emma Pallant should be able to hold on to the lead. But that's what makes this time trial at the end so exciting to me, is that each athlete just desperately wants to, I mean, as hard a time as you or I are having adding all these numbers and points up, these athletes are at 190 beats a minute. They don't know, like, oh, I can let this person beat me because I can't, blah, blah, blah. No, they are trying to get in front of everybody, because they just know the further up they are, the better chance they have to get max points.
Well, we do have to say, if you have a partner there, and we have seen some of the rider cams, they could have somebody next to them who's figuring things out as they go along. So yeah, when you are in the middle of the time trial, you're not doing math, but somebody in the room might be.
Yeah, for the record, I could picture you doing math in your head in the middle of a time trial just for like distraction. But I digress. So right now, look at this. We got these top 3 athletes, 1.5K from the finish of our final stage on today. And again, no drafting involved whatsoever. It has been turned off through the wonderful world of Zwift. But right now we have Melanie Moore at the front, 1.6K to go, with Laura Phillip in second, right behind her, pushing 5.5 watts per kilo. And Meredith Kessler at 5 watts per kilo, 1 second behind our leader, Melanie Moore. Jackie Herring is just 9 seconds behind, sitting in 4th place. Annabelle Luxford is 11 seconds behind. Angela Nath in 6th, 13, and Paula Finlay is moving up, so she's now in 7th place. So again, depending what happens, how high up Melanie Moore finishes, Paula Finlay might find herself on the podium at the end of this stage, because Watkinson, Norden, and Sedal are a little bit further back. So points up for grabs, but right now it looks like Melanie Moore has found the terrain that she likes the most, Sarah, and that's the steeper the better for Melanie.
Well, she is Swiss. You know, they love those mountains, even the virtual ones. No, this is definitely an exciting stage, and looking at athletes like Jackie and like Paula, it seems as though they've really timed this to their strengths. You know, trying to maintain strong effort over the course of the stage and just maintaining a high effort, try to minimize that drop off, because ultimately, you know, that's what half the battle is being able to maintain, not necessarily increase the amount of power. You want to have an even split, as they say, not necessarily, a negative split. That's a lot harder to do. But I think if you were to look at some of the power files after this race, you would see some athletes, they may have overcooked it at the start, and they're paying for it now.
Yeah, I think you shoot for a negative split, but the reality of that coming is usually pretty darn challenging if you've kept it tight enough. But right now, under 700 meters to go, Melanie Moore has opened up now a gap that looks to be stretching as each meter goes by. She's 1.8 now, 2 seconds above Laura Phillip, and then Meredith Kessler right on her wheel. But every point matters, and it matters for today's round, but then those points that carry forward are going to matter towards the series totals. So these athletes are fighting over it right now. Melanie Moore, 3 seconds almost ahead of Laura Phillips, so I think she's going to be able to hold that one off. The gap seems to be expanding here each second that passes, with Meredith Kessler now 1 second behind Laura Phillips. So Laura Phillips trying to hold on to that second place. Jackie Herring 15 seconds behind. But on screen right now, we see what a cool shot of Melanie Moore rounding that corner as she's going to go around and finish first place most likely. And right now I'm looking down the list. Emma Polt she is in 10th place. So Melanie Moore, she had too many points to make up for. So it does look like, to my quick math, Emma Plant's going to hold on to that win, but Melanie Moore might jump all the way up to second place going into starting this stage in 5th place. So the gap is still 3 seconds now to Laura Phillip, and Meredith Kessler is another 3 seconds behind. So we're going to see Melanie Moore win our non-drafting uphill time trial as she crosses the finish line in front of Laura Phillip, and then just a few seconds later, Meredith Kessler. But man, you think those? I bet they're tired. You think they're tired now?
Nah, they're ready to do it again. Half of them are going to go for a run after this. Let's be honest.
That's
I
awesome.
would hope that
And,
they're pretty tired, because this was a physically demanding day for them.
Oh, very much so. Tight racing here, too. So let's see who gets across the finish line. Paul Finlay moves up into 6th place. And you might be wondering why I keep bringing up Paula. But again, the athletes in front of her, Amelia Rose Watkinson and Laura Sedal, they had fallen back a little bit, and they're finishing. Amelia Rose Watkinson moved up just in the last few kilometers and finished in 7th.
Yeah.
So she's going to be able to hold on
Big
to
moves.
her second place. Yeah, big moves.
She definitely she clawed her way up from 10th to 7th in a very short period of time.
Yeah, I mean, I did not see that. Obviously, I get distracted pretty easily. But Amelia Rose Watkinson, clearly she paced herself well as Imogen Simmons finishing right behind her. So right now on screen you see that, and then we're going to have points that were given for that last stage, and then we'll give you the total points here as well. But finish line points first. So it's going to be 20 points for Melanie Moore off this third race in round 1, with Laura Phillip behind in 19, and then descending of points as we go down. So Emma Pallant only got 11 points off of that one, and she was in first place, and luckily she was 11 points in front of Melanie Moore, so she's going to, looks like, hold on to that. But that's why what you see on the screen, Sarah, is why it's so important for these athletes to make sure they give the best effort they can on every race. Like, I think there's tactics involved. You can decide how much energy maybe you want to spend in the race, but there isn't a throwout race. You can't not be good in one race. You've got to be consistent across all three.
No, absolutely. You could have gone for every single sprint point this first stage, but there's a good chance it would have caught up with you. You know, we saw some really smart, really tactical racing today, and some absolute watt bombs being thrown out there.
Absolutely. Okay, so right now we're looking at a replay of kind of all of our races. You know, as we said, we started in Crit City, had some really, really close race finishes on that race. I mean, it was almost every time we went around the KOM banner, it was very tight. But also in that finish, I mean, the men's race was close, and the women's race was even closer. But you had Paula Finlay getting the win here, as we see on screen as well. But actually, that was just the arch banner. But great racing, and again, it kind of stretched the field out every time. So I think if we were to ask these athletes, and I'm going to be lucky enough to interview a few of them later on, I would imagine this race was probably the most painful, because it was just on every time they went underneath that KOM. And then that last lap, going under the KOM banner, and then about 500, 600 meters later, you got to have a sprint like you see on screen here. And that was, to me, super impressive. And then on to the scratch race. We had the London Classic with both groups, to be somewhat expected, kind of stayed together as we went through the course, because I believe it was part of it was a choice, but I think part of it was like nobody really wanted to go that hard, because that first race was so difficult. We had a few flyers early from Joe Skipper, and then you had Tim Reed going for a long bomb, and Jackson Laundry just getting like barely taken at the line by Lionel Sanders. I thought that's the tightest finish I've ever seen in a Zwift race, and maybe would ever see. But then we had the women race, and that was almost, not almost, but was much, much closer and much more exciting. No disrespect to the men, but I'm sorry, guys, the women outraced you today. It was super, super exciting. And watching Emma Pallant try to get that long flyer, and she got caught at the line, I believe 0.008 seconds that stage was lost by. And then going into the last stage for today, or the last race in the first round, was non-drafting hill climb time trial, where we had James Cunnama, Anthony Costas, and Lionel Sanders battling it out over these few kilometers. Near the end, it was just kind of a right hook, left hook, body blow. And in the end, even though there was no drafting, it looked like a sprint finish almost, with Anthony Costas just barely holding off Lionel Sanders by a little over a second, with James Cunnama coming across the line in third place. And, the men crossing the finish line, everybody pushing all the way to the end, because there's point implications up for grabs along that one. So then on to the women's race, which, again, were outclassed the men, keeping it super, super tight with, bunch of talent throughout the field. Emma Pallant trying to hold on points that she had earned in the previous races, but in the end it came down to kind of a drag race between Meredith Kessler, Laura Phillip, and Melanie Moore, just that entire time, just like battling it. And again, it almost looked like it was a drafting race. They were that close. They just kept settling back into each other. But then once the road kind of peaked up, Melanie Moore got in the land that she appreciates, those steeper climbs, She was able to stretch a little bit of a lead, but still very, very close, with just 3 seconds separating Melanie Moore from Laura Phillip, who crossed the finish line in second place, and then a further 4 seconds to Meredith Kessler crossing the finish line third. And I'm still on pins and needles because I have not seen the final point standings for the women's race, but certainly upended and going to see some big moves, but really, really great racing by all those women. And the top 10 women were so close. I mean, it was just 30 seconds that separated them over 15 minutes of racing. So really, really impressive racing by our entire women's field here today. And we're going to go ahead and look at our race totals first for the men. Again, we had a tie with Anthony Casas and Lionel Sanders, both getting 66 points, but Anthony Casas had higher finish positions in those races, so the tie goes to him, so he'll carry on the 20 points for the series for today. But James Cunnama in third place with 58 points, Jackson Laundrie and Mike Phillips, two athletes that showed a lot in the last round of the Zwift Pro Invitational, are 54 and 53 points. Ben Canute down in sixth place, super tight. Ben showed himself all day, 49 points. Aaron Royal with 38. Ronnie Shilneck with 6. Tim Don and Matt Hansen round out the top 10. And I will say, impressive with Matt Hansen running a 240 something at a Ironman just a few days ago. That's pretty impressive. And on our second page of results, Sebastian Kienle, 33 points, not too far off the top 10, so I think he's going to have something to prove next week. Terenzo Bozzone in there with Henry Skoman, Joe Skipper, David McNamee, Peter Hemerick, Tim Reed, Martin Van Riel, and Tim Van Berkel, rounding out our top 19 athletes on the day. So super tight racing on the men's side. And now let's see what we've got on the women's totals, the race totals. It ends up a lot, barely holds on, with Melanie Moore really jumping up in the standings on that one. Super impressive. So Emma Plant, 56 points on that. Melanie Moore, 54 points. So Emma Plant's going to take the 20 points for today's moving forward in the series. Amelia Rose Watkinson holds on to place. Paula Finlay, super, super consistent racing from her today. She ends up in fourth place. Meredith Kessler, waiting for the last stage to really show off what she had today with 46 points. She's tied with Annabelle Luxford and just 1 point behind Laura Siddall in seventh place at 45. Angela 3 points. Laura Phillip moves all the way up into ninth place with 19 points on that last stage. Really, really tight racing on those top 10 women. Imogen Simmons barely missed out on that second stage win. She ends up at 11th place with 37 points, with Jering and Jocelyn McCauley 33. I will say the thing I noticed the most, Sarah, is that these women's point total are much closer than the men. So I think as the series moves forward, again, the women, they kind of upped it today as far as just the competitive nature and how close all the races were. But I think that's going to carry on to these race series moving forward.
No, if you look at the men's race, I'm not somebody who bets, but I think we're going to have a pretty good battle between those two, the top two men, Anthony and Lionel, over the next few weeks. Now, for the women, you could throw a bunch of names up in the air, and that's going to be your winner at this point. So I think looking at the point differential between, it's within the capability of a multitude of athletes to be able to win the overall series for the women. For the men, there are some odds on favorites, I would say, but again, racing, who can predict what's going to happen? It's easy for me in the comfort of my chair to say X, Y, or Z is going to happen, but there are so many variables at play. And I hope that everybody's going to continue to tune in and to listen to us talk about these races, because I've had a great time today.
Yeah, it's been great. I will say your chair looks quite comfortable. I'm jealous. But yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think we're going to see maybe even tactics change a little bit as we move forward, because it's tight on that women's side that, not only do the points matter in that first points race, but they matter so much because, like, way at the end of the round is really impactful. So these ladies are going to have to continue to put themselves out there and show what they have. But that racing today to me was super exciting. Some athletes we expected to do well, maybe didn't do as well, and some athletes that maybe looking at the screen of or a list of athletes that we had signing up, you'd be surprised they were so far up. Like a Jackson Laundry to me comes out a little bit. He's always done a great job of being able to put foot forward in the Zwift Pro Tri race series, and he showed that today. Mike Phillips was another one as well. If you look at it, Melanie Moore, that's not a name a ton of people maybe recognize against these world-class athletes, but she showed that she certainly belongs here today, Sarah.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if there's a learning curve for some of these athletes, because obviously having that experience on Zwift with the racing, we can see that the athletes who did well last series are tending to do pretty well, but that's not to say that some of the ones who are less experienced can't cover some of that gap. I mean, that's the beauty of a multi-week series, is that you're going to see some movement as people get more experience and start to understand, okay, I get it now. I understand that maybe going for some of those early points would have been wiser, and changing their strategies as they start to figure out the competition. Because that's also a big part of it, is now they have more information on their competitors. These women and men don't normally get to ride against each other in this capacity. So they're picking up information. They're going to be able to read their competitors. They're going to be able to anticipate what they do in the next weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to continue to evolve, and some tactics that paid off this week just might not pay off next week anyway. So you got to kind of be on your toes. One thing, Sarah, I think it's important to remind people that the ZPro Tri series isn't just for the pros that we see racing, or just for you and I able to commentate on, but there is a ZPro community series offering the same exact courses available to the Zwift community. So you can see it there on screen. Go check it out. You can be a part of the racing and really put good effort in there. We had some standouts from this week. Was Amon Rich from Australia, 3 podiums and 3 races in the Cat A, and Sarah Hyatt from the UK, 3 wins in 3 races in the Cat C. So great performance to those 2. Haven't yet, go check it out, because as you could see from today, pretty exciting races. The good part is you don't have to listen to me and Sarah when you do it. You could play this one over if you wanted, but you just get to go out there and have a good time. So definitely had a good time here today, Sarah. Fantastic racing. Can't wait till next week, where we're going to see the same format, 3 races in 3 short periods of time and a little bit of rest.
No, I can't wait for it. Thanks for having me on, and thanks everybody for listening.
There you go. For Sarah True, I'm Matt Lieto, and until next time, ride on.